Good morning, everyone. A very warm welcome to the 25th Indirect Tax Colloquium, November 2024, focusing on the recent changes in GST, customs, and foreign trade policy. I would now like to introduce our speaker, Mr. Vivek Jalan, who is a qualified CA, MBA, qualified LLM, and LLB. He is also the chairperson of the National Fiscal Affairs and Taxation Committee of BCC and I. He is the regular speaker at various professional forums specializing in both direct and indirect taxes. During the session, please put your video and microphone off. If anyone has any query, please feel free to write in the chat box. We will address all queries at the end of the session. Now I would like to request Samir sir from VILGST to say a few words. Over to you, Samir sir.
I think there is a connectivity problem with Samir.
Okay.
So
I would request our speaker Vivek sir to take the session ahead. Over to you, Vivek sir.
okay. So good morning to all the participants, and thank you for joining this 25th Indirect Tax Colloquium. Amidst a lot of issues, I can see Samir here now. Samir, you are on mute.
Can you hear me?
Yeah.
I'm audible?
Yes, Samir. Samir, we can hear you. You have gone.
Wait, can you hear me? Am I
Yes,
audible?
Yes.
Yes, sir.
Hello?
Yes, sir. We can hear you, sir.
Samir, you are audible. Please carry on.
Actually, I can't hear my own voice. I'm not sure whether I'm audible to others or not.
अरे फोन करके बता दिया फिर भी नहीं बता रहा.
Okay, so let it be. So, if I'm audible, so good morning to all the participants. Good morning, Vivek. Good morning to all the participants who have joined today for this webinar. We are conducting this webinar for almost this is the 25th edition of it, and we strive to do it every month, once in a month, and we'll continue to do so as long as we have some. No, we have Vivek with us, and you all keep joining us, and so start with this session with a long list of agenda items which Vivek would be covering through this session. So, Vivek, I hand over the proceedings to you. Please proceed with your presentation. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you, Samir. And again, good morning to all the participants. And thank you for joining. Thank you, VILGST, for partnering with Tax Connect. And thank you, Team Tax Connect, for holding these indirect tax colloquiums day in, and month out. So, first of all, thank you to all the participants. Today is the 16th, and all of you would be in a complete confusion today how to file the GSTR 3B and how to handle the invoice management system, which has recently come into the GST space. So in this webinar, we'll cover a few issues. There are multiple issues in the GSTR 3B this month, but finally GSTR 3B has to be filed with issues and decisions have to be taken. So we'll discuss on our view on what are the issues and what decisions we are taking, with various taxpayers, depending upon the situation, so as to you can also consider, in your ecosystem as to how to handle these issues which you would also be facing. I'll share my screen. Is my screen visible? Is my screen visible, Namrata?
Yes, sir.
Yeah. So we'll immediately go on to the most critical issue, as I said, is handling the invoice management system and the GSTR 3B, which you will file for the month of October 2024 by 20th of November 2024. And now you have a non-mandatory optional invoice management system, which is a interface between the GSTR 3B and the GSTR 2B. So once the supplier files his GSTR 1 or 1A or IFF, as the case may be, the invoices get auto-populated in your GSTR 2B generally. But now they will first get auto-populated in your invoice management system. You have already got a draft GSTR 2B as on the 14th. Screen is not visible, Mr. Srikanth is saying. Is it visible?
Yes,
Is the
sir.
screen visible?
It is visible, sir.
Sorry? Yes.
Yes, sir, it's visible.
Okay, so Mr. Srikanth, you need to check at your end. So there is an invoice management system now. You have got a GSTR 2B draft also, but there are certain issues in that GSTR 2B draft. Therefore, you need to be careful. We'll discuss on the what are the issues with the GSTR 2B draft, which you have got on the 14th of November. Invoice management system, you need to accept, reject, or keep pending or take no action on the invoices. But there are credit notes, there are upward movement of the credit notes, there are downward movement of the invoices or downward movement of credit notes which you have accepted, right? So those you cannot keep pending. You have to either accept or reject, and that is the most difficult question or the biggest challenge of invoice management system. In addition to this, there are various data which will not flow through the invoice management system. For example, the registered taxpayers where you have to pay through RCM. That is where say for example, for sponsorship invoices, where your supplier is registered and where he files his GSTR1 showing the tax to be paid on RCM basis. That will not flow through the invoice management system. Bill of entries will not flow through the invoice management system. It will flow directly to the GSTR 2B and the GSTR 5 or ISD return, GSTR 6 data. That will not flow to the invoice management system. It will directly flow through the GSTR 2B. So RCM invoices, bill of entry, ISD invoices primarily, these will not flow through the invoice management system. Further, the ITC, which is time barred, 16(4) invoices, and where the invoice has a place of supply which is different from your territory. All of these will not flow to the invoice management system. It will directly flow to your GSTR 2B. In addition to this, the invoices, credit notes, etc., that will flow to your GSTR 2B. So it is a hybrid model as of now. And amidst this model, you have various issues with the GSTR 2B data itself. So let us discuss on how to on what view which is to be taken. Mind that these slides we have taken from the GST network slides which they have shared with us. Some of you may have joined the Bengal Chambers session with the GST network around 15-20 days back. So you may have got these slides, but we have taken few slides from there because those were the slide directly coming from the government, and that actually tells you the view of the government, right? So the most critical thought behind invoice management system, which we think is taxpayers were always complaining that look, when we issue the credit note, and the supplier does not reverse his input tax credit corresponding to the credit note. We don't even know, we don't have any mechanism by which we can check whether he has reversed his input tax credit or not. Similarly, for the credit notes which you as a recipient have got, taxpayers were complaining that, see, if any supplier does a fraud, he uh, shows a credit note in my name, then why should I reverse my input tax credit? It is not my credit note itself. The initial system of GSTR 1A and 2, that could not be achieved, and you cannot reject the credit note. So now the GST network, with the approval of the GST Council, they have provided this supplier and recipient interface, and the recipient can take action. The supplier can also see what action the recipient has taken. So now they have said, look, you cannot complain anymore that I don't have an interface with the recipient, or the recipient cannot complain that you do not have an interface with the supplier. So there are two dashboards on your IMS. One is the inward supplies dashboard and one is the outward supplies dashboard. Inward supplies, you can see whatever action your supplier has taken, and outward supplies, you can see whatever action your recipients have taken. Mind that on 13th of November, there was an advisory by the GST network, and this is very, very critical. They have categorically said that, look, your outward supplies dashboard on the IMS, that is also now available to you. So now you can see what action your recipient has also taken. So therefore, it is very important. Most of us now are focusing only on inward suppliers dashboard in IMS, where we are taking action on the what are the issues, what are the invoices which the suppliers have uploaded, and we are taking action on the suppliers invoices or credit note. But very important, maybe after 2-3 days, by 18th or 19th, before filing your GSTR 3B, you must also see your outward suppliers dashboard on your screen. Why? Because if the supplier has rejected any of your recipient has rejected any of your invoice, the department can allege fake invoice, right? So you must take action on that. Second, if you have issued a credit note and the recipient has rejected the credit note, it will show on your outward supplies dashboard, and next month you have to pay the tax liability on the credit note which the recipient has rejected. Although you would be a happy person, your finance department would be a happy person if the recipient rejects your credit note. Well, as a GST professional, you are seeing only that 18 rupees tax amount, but your finance would be very happy, or your sales and marketing would be very happy that, okay, if he rejects 18 rupees, I have to reverse. But I will also reverse the entire credit note and I will get a benefit of 100 rupees principal amount. But there again, you have to take a informed judgment as to whether you will actually pay the output tax liability in the next month and reverse your credit note also. That has to be done in coordination with your recipients. So overall, this is the framework and now the issues. There are certain invoices which are duplicate in your GSTR 2B draft, which you have got on the 14th. Well, these are actually last month's invoices. Okay. So last month, 14th October, you also saw IMS was there, but that IMS was not completely functional at that point. Those invoices are now again reflecting in your IMS today. Therefore, when you are seeing your GSTR 2B, you can see certain invoices which are duplicate. Second, in your GSTR 2B or your IMS, there are certain invoices specifically where there are large transactions. You cannot see certain invoices at all. So there are certain invoices which are duplicate. There are certain invoices which you cannot see, which are not available in your draft GSTR 2B at all. Therefore, in our view, what we are doing in our various 2Bs and 3Bs which we are filing, first up is to ensure your GSTR 2B, what you are working on is absolutely correct, right? So please, do a test check. Please, first of all, please download your GSTR 2B and IMS also in Excel. IMS, there is a facility of downloading in Excel. You cannot again re-upload that Excel, but you can always download that Excel, the IMS in Excel. So first of all, download that IMS in Excel, download your 2B in Excel, and you have to ensure that your GSTR 2B is actually sacrosanct. There are no invoices which are not downloading. There are no invoices which are double over there. So first of all, you have to freeze your GSTR 2B and IMS. If you do not do that, then you will do your whole exercise of matching, and thereafter you will find that actually your GSTR 2B or IMS has changed. So this is very, very critical. Again, there are certain taxpayers who do a cumulative comparison of 2B and purchase register, right? So many taxpayers, they from April till now, they do a cumulative to be cumulative purchase register, and then they compare and read out whatever ITC they have taken in the past. GSPs, at least many of them, are not providing that facility this time due to IMS interface. Therefore, do not wait for that facility. Please see whatever pending transactions were there in the last month, and you make your GSTR 2B and purchase register this month, compare, and please file your GSTR 3B. Do not wait till the 20th because there may be more technical glitches. It is very improbable that a one taxpayer was asking me whether GSTR 3B date would be extended. Very, very improbable, friends. That GSTR 3B date would be extended, if at all, maybe 1 or 2 days. So we must take action today itself, not wait for 20th and wait for the GSTR 3B date to extend. Many participants are asking IMS is optional. Yes, IMS is optional, and you might take a call as to not follow the IMS totally. However, it is pertinent to note that all your credit notes in the IMS, they would be deemed accepted if you do not follow the IMS. Therefore, even if for the invoices you are not following the IMS, it is important that you do a credit note reconciliation because that would have a direct impact on your input tax credit, right? Now, there is another problem in this GSTR 2B. Previously, say for example, a hotel bill. You have a hotel bill along with the restaurant bill, right? So ITC you cannot avail on the restaurant part, but you could avail the ITC on the hotel room stay part. As of now, in the GSTR 2B, you are getting a consolidated ITC entry, right? Till the last month, you were getting two line items with two HSN codes or SSE codes and two GST rates. So when you were doing the reconciliation, you applied your mind and you weeded out the food and beverage part and took the ITC on the hotel room stay part, right? This time, as of now, you don't have that facility. So what is advised by us? Again, there is a circular 170, as we have discussed in the past many of the times. There is circular 170 still, notification 14 of 2022 still. So there is a facility of permanent and temporary reversal still in your GSTR 3B. And as per the advisory of the GST network, you can still amend your GSTR 3B. They did issue an advisory earlier that GSTR 3B cannot be amended from Jan 2025. Even that advisory they have withdrawn. So whatever these hotel invoices, if it is for the past period 23-24, please avail all the ITC and then show it as a temporary reversal, because manual checking of the invoices is not possible at this point of time at the fag end of filing the GSTR 3B. But you cannot lose the input tax credit. So it is always advisable to take the input tax credit and show it as a temporary reversal. You might ask me a question that, sir, if this is related to 23-24, this hotel bill is related to 23-24, then it would be time barred on 30th of November. Friends, it is important to note that once you avail the input tax credit and then temporarily reverse, thereafter the time barring period is not available. You see, if we draw the analogy from Rule 37 capital A, which came in December 2022. So that, and of course, if you can match it, take all the input tax credit, no room for litigation. By 30th of November, take everything. If you have to take a call at this point of time, 4 days are left, you have to take a call. Take it, temporarily reverse it. Or take it, do not temporarily reverse it, do not utilize the input tax credit, so that next month you can do the reconciliation and you can take or reverse the ITC without interest, right? So this is again a very important development this time in the IMS or the GSTR 2B. Attempts to regenerate the GSTR 2B are unsuccessful, right? So what the IMS has said that, see, you can do multiple changes in the IMS. Say you have accepted an invoice, but then you find, no, this invoice had to be rejected. Or you have accepted a credit note, you find it is to be rejected. Or you have rejected a credit note or invoice, you found it to be accepted. What you can do is, till the time you file the GSTR 3B, you can multiple times amend it on the IMS and you can regenerate your GSTR 2B. But what we are finding is that regenerating GSTR 2B is not very easy. It takes a lot of time. Therefore, it is our advice that you, as I said initially, you download the entire GST, IMS in Excel, take all the actions which is required in the Excel or mark in the Excel whatever actions you have to take, and therefore on the portal, after you have finalized with all the action, one shot you must put it in the portal. All your actions you must take on the portal and generate your revised GSTR 2B. Do not try to generate GSTR 2B again and again, because it might lead to errors, right? Now again, this IMS advisory, those who are following the IMS this month, this IMS advisory, it says that you should accept only eligible input tax credit. It is our view that this advisory is in contradiction to Circular 170 and Notification 14 of 2022. In our view, you must accept even the ineligible input tax credit and show it as a permanent reversal in your GSTR 2B. Now, the biggest issue, as I've discussed, those who have attended the webinar with the GST network, I have put it up before the GST network also through various chambers of commerce. We are constantly in touch with the government and the GST network as to this credit note issue, but somehow they are bringing in the revenue implication. Many of the companies, you see, many of the very large companies today, they have changed their complete system, which I personally, if you tell me my legal submission is, it is not the right stand as per the GST law. I will tell you the issue which I have put it up before the government on the live webinar itself, those who have attended that webinar. You see, if a credit note is passed by your supplier on 31st of October, right? You receive that credit note and account for that on 1st of November. While filing the IMS or the return for October, right? By on 20th of November, you cannot accept that credit note, right? You cannot accept that credit note because it is not matching. Even if you match, it is not matching. You have booked it on 1st of November. So, for credit notes or upward amendment of credit note, you have only two options, accept or reject. If you do not take any action, it is deemed accepted, right? But you cannot accept. You should not reject also. I was speaking to one CFO, right? And he said, oh, great. Let the recipient reject my credit note. I will reverse my credit note immediately. So while as a GST professional, I said you are looking at 18 rupees GST, but your finance team would be looking at 100 rupees, the base value of the credit note. So you cannot reject that credit note. So what action you need to take? What is the call which you need to take? In our concerted view, those credit notes which you cannot take a call on in this IMS, let it be deemed accepted, right? Let it be deemed accepted. And just like the last month, you reverse it in 4A5. As per the January 2021 GST network advisory, now credit notes have to be netted off in 4A5. Therefore, those credit notes which you have accepted, which you have reconciled, let it off with 4A5. Those credit notes which you have not accepted or you have not accounted for, but which you have not rejected also, show it as an add back to 4A5 and keep a manual calculation. In the next month, when you have taken a call that yes, these are my credit notes, thereafter in the next month, you show it as a reduction or net off with 4A5 column table in your GSTR 3B. You might ask me a question that, sir, 4A5, you are telling me this might lead to a negative figure in 4A5, right? It might lead to a negative figure in 4A5. Maybe in the next month, credit note value would be more than the input tax credit value. Please again note that there is a advisory of the GST network. Now, negative figures are accepted in 4A5. You can take a negative figure in 4A5. Also, you can take a negative figure in table number 3 for output tax liability, right? So that issue is resolved. Many of the companies, they are taking a call that, gentlemen, for my purchase return, right? So you have supplied to a company and he rejects your supply. till now you were filing a GST credit note as a supplier. But now many of the companies as recipients, they're saying, no, we will issue you a counter invoice. In our view, this has been done just to, you see, take care of the complexities of the invoice management system. However, in my view, in my legal submission, this is a wrong action which is taken, and this may be contested and disputed by the department going forward. Now, again, another issue is when you are downloading the data, you can take the data in Excel for the IMS, but uploading, you cannot do an Excel upload on IMS thereafter. So there is no option as of now, but to mark all your accepted, rejected, pending action, etc. on the GST portal itself. So we have already discussed four types of documents are there where you cannot do a pending action. You have to either accept or reject. Credit note, we have discussed. Upward amendment in credit note by your supplier. That again you have to accept or reject. Downward amendment of credit note, if you had earlier rejected the credit note, that you have to either accept or reject. And downward amendment in the invoice or debit note where you had already earlier accepted the invoice or debit note, right? First of all, our view, as you can see on point number 10, for invoices related to financial year 23-24, please do not take any action on the IMS. Whatever action you want to take on financial year 23-24 invoices, which have reflected in your GSTR 2B in November, you must take all the action on that in your GSTR 3B itself, right? As you had taken earlier. Now, coming to the upward amendment of credit note, which you had accepted earlier, no pending action you can take. Downward amendment of the credit note, which you had rejected earlier. The biggest challenge in these upward or downward amendment of credit note, which you cannot take any pending action, is identification. This amendment for credit note, what is the action you had taken earlier? So that becomes a challenge. I can only, what will come going forward in future, maybe a facility will come to identify, etc. But as of now, in the IMS, you have no facility whereby you can identify what is the action you had taken in the earlier credit note, right? So that you can identify and you can take an action on the amendment of the credit note. So again, our suggestion, what I have suggested in the credit note issue, I would suggest the same thing out here. Do not take any action on the IMS. Let it all flow to your GSTR 2B and 3B. Take the action in the GSTR 3B 4A 5 column, right? What you used to do in the earlier returns. Because taking action on IMS as of this time, where you cannot identify, that becomes risky, right? Again, for an invoice or debit note, which your supplier has provided to you earlier, and as of now, that invoice or debit note is downward amended, right? So the supplier has reduced the value of the invoice or debit note, right? If you had accepted the invoice or debit note earlier, only then you can take a no pending action. You have to either accept or reject. Again, the problem is the same. How will you identify what is the invoice or debit note which you had earlier accepted, or whether you had earlier rejected that invoice or debit note, right? So here again, if you are rejecting, if you are accepting this downward amendment in the invoice or debit note, please see our view in point number 14 on your screen. If you have earlier accepted the invoice or debit note, now you are rejecting the downward amendment, you should have sufficient evidence in hand. You should be very clear in your mind. I will give you a mantra, right? Because finally, whatever calls you take, it has to be on the basis of certain strategy. The strategy is very simple. Wherever you are taking a call which would lead to a loss of the government revenue, you should have sufficient evidences in hand. So if a supplier has given an invoice or debit note of 100 plus 18 earlier, you had taken the ITC of 18. Now he has revised it downward by 10 rupees and you are rejecting that, right? So naturally supplier has to pay the GST on it going forward. But you as a recipient, you should have evidence as to why you are rejecting this invoice or debit note of 10 rupees, right? It is very downward amendment. It is very critical. Many a times it so happens that supplier gives a downward amendment, whereas you book the net figure only in the purchase register. So you should have those evidences and answers ready. But what it would do, it would prevent a lot of fraudulent suppliers. Many of the time, fraudulent suppliers with malified intent, what they do is they downward amend the invoice or debit note and flee off. As of now, the recipient have full control. The recipient, the moment they reject this downward amendment, the supplier has to pay the differential tax on it, right? You have to be very careful again for the RCM invoices which will flow directly to your GSTR 2B. The moment a supplier has shown a tax to be paid on RCM basis by the recipient and it reflects in your GSTR 2B, it will not flow to your IMS. And in my view, this facility should come going forward because this is a very risky area for the recipient. Say, for example, a GTA where he has charged you on forward charge and he also shows in the return tax paid on RCM basis. And here it flows directly to your 2B. You have no IMS facility for rejecting this invoice. So here it casts a problem for you during assessment. Therefore, this facility should be there, but till this facility is not there, you need to see whether you are paying RCM, great. If you're not paying RCM, on these RCM invoices, then you must do a communication with the supplier on the portal and get it rectified, right? Again, 16.4 invoices, place of supply, wrong entry invoices. In my view, this should also flow to the IMS so that action can be taken by the recipient. But as of now, this will directly flow to your 2B and therefore, you can only take the supplier to task in this. GSTR 6 ISD returns, many of the times these returns are, they do not reflect the entire ITC. So this again will flow to your GSTR 2B. It will not be reflected in your IMS. So again, the advisory, as I said, just a moment. The advisory of the GST network on IMS, that supplier view is available. As I told you in the very beginning of this webinar, please also see your supplier's view or outward supplier's view. In case your recipient has rejected an invoice, then the government might come to you with the allegation of fake invoice. If the recipient has rejected your credit note, then in the next month you need to pay the tax, maybe along with interest. Right? Okay, so again, another advisory on IMS is that as of now, the GSTR 3B figures will not be locked and you can make amendments on the GSTR 3B as of now, as we have discussed. So again, this is a GST network slide which I am sharing with you. They have shared this PPT with us. In case you have any suggestions on IMS, you may write to praveen.dokania@gstnet10.org.in. So at least these credit notes and so many issues are being faced. Please do write to GST network so that they take cognizance of the issue. They are aware of the various issues of the taxpayers and they can take rectificatory action, right? Now, friends, few very critical changes I will discuss from 1st of November 2024, right? Which may have skipped your attention. Of course, there are many changes as per the Finance Act, the amended rules. I will discuss only on one critical change which may have skipped your attention. That is the amendment in section 13, subsection 3 for time of supply for RCM cases. So many of us taxpayers, while filing the 99C specifically, what we do, we call out the interest payable under 13.3. What is the interest payable under 13.3? In case RCM, I am talking about the earlier provision, 13.3A, 13.3B. Earlier, till 31st of October, what was the law for payment of RCM? The law was that you need to pay the RCM as on the date where you enter the RCM in your books of accounts or within 60 days of the invoice. If you are paying a transporter on RCM basis, the transporter's invoice is dated 1st of September 2024 and you book that invoice, say today, 16th of November 2024. RCM you have to pay within 60 days, that is by 31st of October 2024. Right? If you have made the payment delayed, then you needed to pay interest. So 60 days from the date of the invoice. Now, from 1st November, a clause C has been introduced under section 13, subsection 3, where in case your supplier, say this GTA, in my example, he is unregistered. So the due date of payment of RCM would be the date of your self-invoice. We all know that for unregistered suppliers, where you need to pay RCM, the duty taking document is your self-invoice under section 31, subsection 3, clause F, right? And you have to make a payment voucher also. Now, payment of RCM, you have to make within the date of the self-invoice. So you might think, great, I've forgotten to pay RCM 6 months back. I make a self-invoice today, pay it off without interest. This is the normal interpretation which maybe many would do, but this is not the fair. Under Rule 47A, the due date of payment of RCM is 30 days of the receipt of the service. So, within 30 days of the receipt of the service, not the date of invoice of the transporter, right? Like earlier. Within 30 days of the receipt of the service, you have to make your self-invoice and pay the RCM. If you are not doing it, then you have to pay interest. So, friends, from November, you have to change the entire process of payment of RCM if you have to save on to this interest, right? It is a very important change which may have skipped attention of many taxpayers. Please take cognizance of this and implement the consequent amendments in your operating systems from today. The action needs to be taken in November for this change. Now, those of you who are VILGST members, yesterday or day before, the VILGST has uploaded this very important case law. And this is very, very important, right? While this is not a law, but I would say this is one of the most landmark judgments in GST by the Honorable Bombay High Court in the case of L&T IHI Consortium, right? So I would, explain this by means of a simple example for better understanding. Today, for works contractors, what is the issue, right? Those who are doing EPC contracts, works contracts, or such other bulky projects who are rendering services. What is the time of supply of the services? Either it is the date of the invoice or the date of payment. What happens in a EPC project or works contract project? Generally, you get an advance and you pay an advance. It is called mobilization advance. In this instant case, L&T IHI Consortium, they challenged the wires of this section, right, of GST on advance payment. They said that, look, as of now, I'm not raising my invoice, right? I'm only getting an advance payment. Why should I pay GST on that? The Honorable Bombay High Court has rejected the challenge to the wires of this section. I will not go into intricacies. It is a very long judgment and very fine law points have been discussed in this judgment. The final result or order is that GST is payable on advance receipt for services, right? However, the bigger question is, if you are saying under section 13(2)(b) that the time of supply for GST purposes is advance receipt, then consequentially, why under 16(2)(b) you want to see an invoice? Why input tax credit is not received where you are paying GST on advance to the supplier of the services? Here, the Honorable Bombay High Court in a very landmark judgment, it has held few, you see, doctrines, I would say. It has held that where a recipient who has paid advance for receipt of services can prove that the supplier has paid the GST to the government on advance, and he can prove that there is a robust certainty of performance of the service by the supplier, and he can prove that the recipient is in the process of generating goods or services supply, and it is at that stage that the actual supply of goods or services were actually being fructified. So, if in simple terms, if the recipient can show that the supply of services, in my example of works contract, it is continuing and it will achieve finality, it will fructify in the near future, then as per the Honorable Bombay High Court in the case of L&T IHI Consortium, input tax credit can be taken on the advance payment made to the supplier on the basis of receipt voucher issued by the supplier for the advance of services received, right? So this is a very, very important judgment. Most of the works contractor, they face a problem of liquidity blockage in the projects which they are doing, because while they are paying GST, they are not getting the input tax credit. In fact, many of the times we advise our clients also that, look, if you are getting an insurance bill, right, which is for half 6 months of this year, 6 months of next year, it is on advance, then tomorrow the department might question, right? So this maybe not a change. I'm sure the department would go for an SLP with the Honorable Supreme Court in this case. But as of now, till this SLP does happen, this Bombay High Court ruling, you can go into and take actions accordingly. Another important landmark. So many, things are coming up for the tax department and the finance department. While you can go to my YouTube channel, the Tax Connect Advisory Services YouTube channel, where we have discussed the GST amnesty scheme and the forms to be filed threadbare. I would discuss only the fine prints over here, right, in this colloquium. There is a advisory on 8th of November, first of all, right? So for going into the GST amnesty scheme under 128 capital A, what you need to do? The most important thing is you need to make the payment of taxes within 31st of March 2025, right? That is the most important thing. You also need to file form SPL01 and SPL02. These are the two actions which you need to take, right? First, make the payment of taxes, and two, file form SPL01 or SPL02 as the case might be. SPL01 and SPL02 form will be made available on the GST portal in January 2025. But what the GST network has advised, so there are two laws. One is the GST law and the other is the GST network law now, with the kind of advisories which are coming from the GST network. Still, it is a part of the government ecosystem, and therefore taxpayers should also consider these advisories while taking decisions, while they are not mandatory. So the GST network has advised that, gentlemen, please make the payment of your taxes. Form filing you can do when it comes in January 2025, right? So there are two forms, as I said, SPL01, SPL02. If you have a show cause, but you don't have an order, you have to go with SPL01 form. And you have to make the payment of the taxes for which you want to go into the amnesty scheme by DRC 03, right? However, in the other two cases, in case you have got an order, you have filed an appeal order is pending, or you have got an appeal order itself, and you cannot go to the tribunal, you go under circular 224 and make the pre-deposit and wait for the tribunal to be formed. So if you have got an order, appeal not filed, you have filed an appeal, order not issued, you have got an appeal order, you are waiting for the tribunal. In all these cases, you have to go with SPL02. However, you have to make the payment of the taxes by DRC 03, but wait, do not make the payment by of taxes in these three cases by DRC 03 normally. You have to go to the electronic liability ledger. On the electronic liability ledger, you have to make the apportionment of such liability and thereafter pay the tax amount. Once you make the payment of the taxes, thereafter you can file the SPL01 or SPL02 form, right? When it comes on the portal. So clear? Please do not make this mistake. In the transitional transitional period, Tran 1, Tran 2, Tran 3, till today, in the last month itself, I have attended 3 hearings on transitional, issues. So till today, transitional period litigation is on, and we have seen earlier in the Vivad se Vishwas scheme, in income tax, in the settlement of disputes scheme, or so many other schemes, the scheme itself goes for litigation. So please be very careful while going into the scheme. Please do not make the payment of the taxes while GSTR 3B or DRC 03, where you have to go through the electronic liability ledger, right? Now, a few critical issues. If you have got multiple issues, right, in your one order, you have to go order wise or show cause wise in the amnesty scheme. You cannot go issue wise, right? So if you have got an order for multiple issues, or if you have got an order for multiple periods other than the period which is eligible for amnesty, that is 17, 18, 18, 19, 19, 20. Say if you have got a show cause for 5 years, 17, 18 to 21, 22. For 3 years, you can go into amnesty. You can pay your taxes, get a relief of interest and penalty if the order is under 73 or show cause is under 73. What about the other 2 years, 2021 and 21, 22? For these 2 years, you can make the payment of taxes now, but going forward, please do not get into this confusion. For other 2 years, as of now, the system will allow you to merely make your payment of taxes and go into the amnesty. But when you get your release order SPL 05, at that point of time, for these 2 years which you are not eligible for amnesty, they will ask you to make the payment of interest and penalty also. Similarly, if an order or show cause has refund also, for refund cases, you cannot go into this amnesty. So as of, do you have to pay for the tax, interest and penalty for the refund amount, right? Other matters, you can go into the amnesty, right? However, if you have got a 16(4) time barring notice, the time barring issue is there under 16(4), then you have to call out that 16(4) issue in the SPL 01 or SPL 02. And for the time barring issue, you will get a full relaxation. Nothing needs to be done on that. You can take up and make the payment for taxes for issues other than the refund issue, right? Now, a question is asked by many of the taxpayers: if I have paid the pre-deposit earlier, right? If I had made the pre-deposit, or if I have made the payment of the taxes earlier, can I go into the amnesty scheme only for interest and penalty if the, of course, show cause and order is under section 73? The answer is yes. You will get a credit of the pre-deposit you have paid, and even if you have paid all your taxes or part of your taxes, you will get a credit of that, make the balance payment of taxes and get a payment a waiver of interest and penalty accordingly. However, please note, for 7512 case, what is a section 7512 case? Where you have admitted the liability and you have shown the liability in GSTR 1, but you have not made a payment in GSTR 3B and there is an interest liability. For such cases, you cannot go into the amnesty. So again, be very careful. While going into the amnesty, you must see 7512 cases. 7512 cases not eligible for amnesty, right? Transitional matters, if you have got a transitional credit dispute, you can go into the amnesty. IGST compensation cess issue also, you can go into amnesty, right? However, you can utilize the input tax credit ledger balance for making the payment under amnesty. But if you have a matter relating to RCM, or you have a matter where you have to pay for erroneous refund, then you can utilize only your cash ledger. Very important, day before yesterday, I saw customs order for IGST. If you have got a customs order under the Customs Act for IGST, in that case, you cannot go for the amnesty because it is not under the GST Act. It is under the Customs Act, even though if it is for the yeah, IGST. If the department goes for appeal, right? If you go for an appeal, you have to withdraw the appeal. But if the department goes for appeal, you go for amnesty. Afterwards, you see that the commissioner appeals has given an order while enhancing the order. So in such case, when after the commissioner appeals order, you can make the payment of taxes within 3 months. And the amnesty, the very fact that you have gone for amnesty under that order itself, that amnesty scheme, going into the amnesty scheme, that procedure will not be cancelled. So SPL01, SPL02, along with all the documents you have to kind of file. You may get a show cause notice in SPL03 within 3 months. You have to file your reply within 1 month. In SPL04, if the department finds everything is fine, they will issue you a release order in SPL05. If the department rejects your amnesty proposal, it will issue SPL07. You can go to an appeal in SPL0 for the rejected order in SPL07. If you lose in the appeal, then you can go further. If you don't want to go further, you SPL08 for restoring your order, right? So most important is be very careful of the timelines, and please do everything within the timeline, because if the timelines are violated, then amnesty benefit may go. Again, a very important thing, in case you have got an order under 74, don't be disheartened. You can go for an appeal if the appellate commissioner under section 75(2) feels that the order is not correct under 74. He might give an instruction to issue the order under section 73. And with that section 73 order, within 6 months, you can go into the same amnesty scheme. Even if you have got a section 73 order, right, where you want to go into amnesty scheme, many of the people, they are asking me, taxpayers, whether I should go for an appeal or not. Yes, of course, you have to go for an appeal if you have got a section 73 order, and even if you want to go for amnesty for that, to get it right size, number one, and to prevent recovery action. So if you have got an order, please go for an appeal against that order, even if you want to go for amnesty, right? So let's not be confused in this. We have already, you can go to our YouTube channel. I have discussed these issues, intricacies of the amnesty scheme, threadbare over there. There is another waiver scheme under 16(5) and 16(6), wide section 148, read with notification 22 of 2024, right? So if you have got a section 16(4) order, right, till financial year 2020-21, you have taken the ITC till November 2021, then you can go into this waiver scheme. If you are going into amnesty scheme for the same order, no need to go for rectification separately. But if that order is separate, then you have to go for a rectification. The process of filing for rectification for 16(4) order, where you want to go under 16(5), that is on your screen. We'll share this PPT with you. You can go through the process of going into 16(5) scheme, right? However, most important thing, and I keep on deliberating on this, for 16(5) scheme, if you have an order under 16(4), you want to go under 16(5) waiver scheme under section 148, read with notification 22/2024. Two important things. First, 8th April 2025, please note the date. 8th April 2025 is the last date to go under the waiver scheme under 16(5). If you miss the train, you miss the bus. Number two, when you are going for the rectification, right, under DRC 08, right, or APL 04, you have to select a notification 22 of 2024. Please do not make a mistake of going under DRC 08 with and selecting the wrong drop down, right? It is very important. Otherwise, this going into this waiver scheme itself will go into a dispute, right? Because we have seen over the past so many disputes come out of the amnesty or waiver schemes, right? Next important issue, new RoDTEP return. Many of you who are exporters, you might be getting a RoDTEP script. Earlier it was MEI script, now it is RoDTEP script. Now what we used to do for RoDTEP, you know, for RoDTEP there is a rate of RoDTEP industry wise. So for tea there is a different rate, for fruits and vegetables there is a different rate, for many other items. So there are different rates of RoDTEP. For apparels there is RoStel. What we used to do every year, we used to go to the Ministry of Commerce in the South Block. We used to file our applications for the industry as a whole for rate revision. And that rate revision would be applicable to all. Now, all those exporters who are taking RoDTEP benefit of more than rupees 1 crore in a year, they have to file a return of RoDTEP for 23-24 by 31st of March 2025. 3 months of grace would be given till 30th of June 2025. If the return is not filed by 30th of June 2025 for RoDTEP, then you will stop getting the RoDTEP benefit, right? And you have to then after file the return with LT. So I will not get into very much intricacies of this RoDTEP return. However, this is a very crucial thing for all the exporters who are getting a RoDTEP benefit of more than rupees 1 crore, right? Return must be filed by 31st of March. It is not a simple return. For all the complexities, we know we have filed for RoDTEP rate revision before the Ministry of Commerce. It requires a lot of toothpicking. Therefore, those exporters who are taking the benefit of RoDTEP, please also sensitize your customs department to take action for filing this RoDTEP return so that it is filed within the timeline and your RoDTEP return is not stuck up. Few other GST network advisories, GST DRC 03A, that is now available on the portal. So all those taxpayers who have filed, you have made the payment for an order or pre-deposit, etc. through DRC 03, they were rejected and you have to again pay the pre-deposit or you have to go for an appeal. Now, no problem. You can route your DRC 03 through DRC 03A, right? DRC 03A means even if your DRC 03 did not pick the order against which you have made a pre-deposit or payment, now you can pick it through DRC 03A, and the amount which is paid by DRC 03 against that order, that would be apportioned to that order. 31st of March 2025. So from 1st of April 2025, another important change. Those taxpayers with aggregate turnover of more than 10 crores have to mandatorily file e-invoice on the GST portal within 30 days of the invoice, right? So specifically for service providers, we see many service providers, they issue pro invoices, and only when they receive the payment, they issue the final invoice, right? So all that is over now. From 1st of April 2025, Within 30 days, you have to upload on the portal your e-invoice. From January 2025, those taxpayers who have not filed the GSTR 3 returns for 3 years or any GST return for 3 years can be 1, 3B, 5, 5A, 6, 7, 8, 9, anything. Any return you have not filed for 3 consecutive years, then you will be barred from filing any GST return thereafter. So, November and December, please see specifically your smaller companies where you may have skipped filing GST returns. Especially these are skipped for TDS returns, etc. TDS, TCS returns, ISD returns. These, if you have not filed for 3 consecutive years, please file it in December. Otherwise, your portal will be blocked. Hard locking of figures in GSTR 3B. So from the next year, in case you have made any declaration in GSTR 1, you have to make the corresponding payment of taxes in the 3B. You have to amend your GSTR 1, only then your tax liability will be amended in 3B. So 3B figures for the purpose of outward supplies will be hard coded. You have to use GSTR 1A facility to amend GSTR 3B. Very critical, friends. So GSTR 1A becomes very critical from the next month. In the same vein, the GST network has also advised through advisory that GSTR 3B for the input tax credit can only be amended through IMS. If you want to amend GSTR 3B, you have to amend in the IMS. This would be a very, very landmark development in GST compliance. What you can, as of now, they have deferred this ITC part, but they have made their intention very, very clear, friends, right? So, IMS, I got, many of the participants, they were saying IMS is not mandatory. The GST network has made it intention very, very clear. Council is very clear. IMS is the future. Going forward, 3B cannot be amended. It can be amended only through IMS, right? So if not this month, please get into the IMS mode from the next month. That is what GST network has advised us. So from now onwards, again, all the GST appeals, service tax, central excise, everything, all the appeal and adjudicating hearings also would be on virtual mode only virtual mode. However, if as a taxpayer you opt for physical mode, you have to give reasons why you want a physical mode hearing, right? Otherwise, everything will be on virtual mode. Well, we have in the faceless regime in income tax under 144B, we have also represented before the Ministry of Finance that there should be a hybrid mode available for the large taxpayers at least, where there is huge data to be uploaded. So here also, if you as a taxpayer, there is a hybrid mode available. If you as a taxpayer, you want to go for physical mode, you have to give reasons and you have to pray for a physical hearing rather than a virtual hearing. What can be the reasons for praying for physical hearing? Huge documentation is there, not possible through virtual mode. The person who will attend the hearing not and is incapacitated, and network connectivity in your area is low. This would specifically be critical in the non-metro cities, in the B towns, right? Or in the smaller cities. There, it is very difficult. Even the tax officers, sometimes it is not possible for them to, you see, understand and appreciate things on the virtual mode. So again, another challenge in the indirect tax regime is to comply with the virtual mode hearings. Customs has seen a lot of changes, right? Lot of changes over the last 6 months. Most important is the ease of doing business. Instruction number 27. So ease of doing business, they have brought in an instruction that commercial investigations under customs. Many of the times, the moment an investigation is done under custom, it takes the form of an investigation for smuggling, right? It is so stringent. So by this advisory, they have said that you see, customs commercial investigation cannot be a investigation like that of smuggling. It has to be through notice mode. Summon should be issued only in case required. Summon to senior management should not generally be issued until they are wanting to dodge the department. Time frame should be given for replying to the documents. You cannot have one summon of the other. Many of the times we see officers, they are asking for data in piecemeal. Data cannot be asked in piecemeal now. They have to be asked once and for all. You cannot ask the managing director or CFO of a company which is, say, having its head office in Mumbai to come to the Chennai port, right? So the location of the management needs to be seen. Cognizance needs to be taken. But along with ease of doing business, they have also said a thing which I feel may be, challenged. They are saying that during the course of investigation, the taxpayers may be informed regarding the legal provision for making the voluntary payment. By my legal submission, it is not uh, a correct thing to come in the instruction, because most of the high courts, every court I would say has held that collection or recovery, even a voluntary payment disputed going forward, which is made during an investigation process, would be considered to be as a payment under protest, and high courts have also granted refunds for these payments which is made during investigation. And most important is that if your matters or issues are not resolved, you must write to the commissioner of customs of your area for a meeting. The commissioner shall be duty bound to meet in case your issues are not getting resolved. Another very, very important revision which is done by the Honorable Supreme Court in the case of Canon India, right? This is a landmark judgment of the Supreme Court, which is revising another landmark judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, wherein the Honorable Supreme Court has held that DRI officers were not the proper officers for issuing show cause notices. Now, the Honorable Supreme Court has reversed that decision, and they have held that DRI officers are the proper officers for issuing show cause notices. Therefore, all the matters wherein you had taken the shelter under Canon India judgment of the Honorable Supreme Court, all those matters would be reopened, right? You might have already got notices from the Customs Department in case you have such a matter. So, long battle ahead on the basis of merits in those cases where you are taking judgment, the shelter under Canon India judgment. Well, in case of customs, we all know that every bill of entry is a order, and against every bill of entry, you have to file a separate appeal. Now, if you have got, say, 10 bill of entries, you have to file 10 appeals. And the commissioner appeals. The PPT is stopped. Just hold on. Yeah. So the commissioner appeals cannot take a stand that you see the bill of entry, whatever decision he has taken in the earlier bill of entry, that will prevail, right? He cannot take that stand. For every bill of entry, a speaking order needs to be passed by the appellate authority. Just yeah. So Now again, you see there is another mandatory additional qualifier. So this again, this while this is only for diamond industry, but where you have to give the method of production for the import of diamonds to ascertain the classification. But going forward, it might also be replicated in other import of other items. So what they have had, why this instant circular 55 of 2020 amending that circular is that while filing the bill of entry for diamonds, in case of synthetic or reconstructed diamonds, you have to file the method. You have to declare the method of production for appropriate classification. So this may be replicated in other products also going forward, where you might have to disclose more details during the bill of entry stage also for, you see, classification. Special valuation branch cases. So SVB cases under customs, this investigate into cases which are for import or export between related parties. So in cases where import and export, specifically import, is happening from a related party, in case the customs officer wants to reject your transaction value, he has to reject only as per Rule 3B of Customs Valuation Rules, wherein he has to give a judgment that why he is rejecting a transaction value based on the transaction value of identical goods or deductive value or on the basis of computed value. So he has to follow Rule 3B. Many of the times what we see in case of related party transaction value rejection, the field officers, they merely say that it is a related party, and in case of non-related parties, they just produce another transaction where a higher rate is charged. In such cases, this shelter can be taken in the under the case of Commissioner of Customs versus Hydras Pema India Private Limited. In case of SVB cases for rejection of transaction value between related parties, the Rule 3B of Customs Valuation Rules must be followed. Right, for 9610 cases, Rule 9610 requires in case you have imported and goods under advance license, you cannot take a refund of duty on payment of IGST. Right, you can take LUT refund, you cannot take IGST paid refund. In this budget, in this GST Council meeting, they have scrapped 9610 with effect from 8th of October 2024. But what about the period before 8th of October? And most important, it is a revenue neutral exercise and a huge interest burden is there. So now all those people, all those exporters who have these 9610 cases, there is a very good news for you. The Honorable Kerala High Court in the case of Sans Laboratories Private Limited has ruled 9610 as ultra virus. And irrespective of the scrapping of 9610 from 8th of October, the Honorable Kerala High Court has ruled that 9610 is ultra virus ab initio. So for those taxpayers who are in Kerala, this is a big relief. However, for other taxpayers, specifically these 9610 cases are there in the state of Maharashtra and Gujarat. So for all those taxpayers, this Kerala High Court judgment in the case of Sans Laboratories Private Limited, here you can take shelter under these. So now we have been contesting on the commercial credit note. Many of the times, commercial credit notes are issued for post-sale discount. Right? In the case of Supreme Paradise, the Honorable Madras High Court said that the post-sale discount or discount simplicitors, they cannot be considered to be as a service provided by the recipient of the commercial credit note. However, in the instant case, all petrol pumps, all those SSEs who are petrol pumps, right, they need to be aware of this advanced ruling. In the case of P Achyutan Nair and Company. In this case, the petrol pumps get a commercial credit note from the Hindustan Petroleum, right? Their principles. The Honorable Advance Ruling Authority has held that these commercial credit notes are actually a activity for tolerating an act, right? So a new angle has been brought. So all petrol pumps, they need to be aware of this judgment, this advance ruling, and take cognizance of this because advance ruling, as you know, the department uses the advance ruling to build up and frame up new cases. So petrol pumps, I would say, be aware of this. Again, another advanced ruling for Uber services. Now, Uber, you see, all e-commerce operators should be aware of this advanced ruling on the case of Uber India Systems Private Limited. This is the Karnataka Advanced Ruling Authority, where Uber, we all use Uber, Ola, etc. So Uber has contested that it is not an e-commerce operator, right? Because services are not supplied through the Uber app going forward in their new business, right? As of now, of course, the payment is received by Uber many a times. But in the new business, Uber wanted to start a new business wherein they would not route the payment through them. They would just take a membership fees from the drivers, right? But Honorable Advanced Ruling Authorities, and this is a very good judgment, all e-commerce operators who are under 9(5), they are for RCM payment or for TCS, they should go through this judgment and see whether they are e-commerce operators or not. The Advanced Ruling Authority has held that even if the payment is not routed through the app, even then Uber in the new business would continue to be a e-commerce operator. Scrap is not a second-hand good. That is quite common understanding, and they cannot avail of the provision under Rule 32(5) for marginal scheme. So as is varies basis, this is a circular by the GST Council very recently where it has held that many a time there are disputes like there is a dispute whether kulfi is ice cream or not, right? There is a dispute in West Bengal specifically and now across India, whereas rice own mill owners or for those who are grinding wheat, they the non-cash consideration has to be treated in the valuation or not. So all of these cases where there is a dispute, again, hotels and restaurant it is another case where hotels who are charging more than 7,500 for even one room in a year, a higher rate of GST is applicable on them. So all of these cases can be those cases where going forward, the whatever rate is applicable, it might be applicable, but for the past period, all these sectors may go under this circular, may plead before the government on treating them for the past cases on as is, where is basis. So friends, this is all. I think I've covered all the topics for the day. We'll take the questions in the chat box for the next few minutes. Okay, Mr. Lahiri is asking IMS is mandatory or optional. I have said it is optional now, but in the same vein, you must always, prepare for IMS going forward because IMS is the way forward for GST compliance. Mr. Singhania says, what will be the accounting entry if the customer rejects the credit note? Just reverse the credit note. As a supplier, you are, accounting entry would be just a reversal of the credit note, nothing else. You would be in an advantageous position. Mr. Singhania, we have to raise debit note to reverse the credit note? Yes, but that debit note should not be a GST debit note. It is just your internal document. Should be a commercial debit note. Mr. Sitaram says, as per GST portal advisory, IMS is optional facility introduced from October, so we can opt for deemed acceptance. Yes, Mr. Sitaram, you can opt for deemed acceptance. let it all flow and be in your GSTR 2B mode. What my suggestion is, IMS is the going forward, the compliance mechanism. So please do a reconciliation, especially for credit notes, because there, if you are deemed accepting the credit notes, going forward, if you see that the credit note you should not have accepted, then you might be in litigation and GST department may require as to why you should not reverse the input tax credit. So I would say credit notes are very, very important for this IMS, even if you are going for deemed acceptance. Mohammed Ismail says records having more than 500, no filter button provided, and we have to select invoice wise by typing GSTN, invoice number, and invoice date, which is not practical. Yes. So I have spoken, to somebody, in the network, and they say that these facilities would be coming going forward. As of now, it is not there, but I have already given you the email ID of the GST network. Please do share your feedback with in the email ID. Invoices with special characters are not being fetched in advanced search. Yes, very, very important, Mr. Akash. As of now, it is not being fetched in advanced search. But what you should do, as I've said, do not rely on the search in the IMS. Download all the data. Do your uh, mm, comparison in the Excel with the purchase register and then again upload it. For large database, how can it be possible to take action on each invoice one by one? Yes, it is right that for large taxpayers, it is very difficult to take action one by one. Again, for this time, till such, what I understand from the GST network is that in the next month or so, utility would come wherein you can re-upload your data from Excel to IMS. But as of now, till the utility is there, what I would suggest is let the invoices, maybe, this is just my suggestion as a stopgap arrangement, because you have to file the GSTR 3B, right? What can you do? You can deemed accept all the invoices, but credit note are not so many. You must go through IMS for credit notes or amendments in credit notes. Nitesh says, can we show the ITC net of credit note and show credit note in 4B2? Mr. Nitesh, I think this may not be the right stand in my opinion. Number one, the GST network advisory dated January 2023 is there, where you have to net off from the 4A5, right? And you are clogging 4B2 along with 4A5, right? So you are taking two actions where you should have taken only one simple action. The more, it is my opinion, while you might take a stand according to your suitability, in my opinion, showing credit note twice, once in 4A5, again in 4B2, may not be the simple stand. Mr. Shomik says, since IMS is optional, do I necessarily need to accept the credit note this month? If you do not, so Shomik, as I said, if you do not accept the credit note, it would be deemed accepted, right? Tomorrow, if you have to reject that credit note, you see, it is a problem. So that is why my suggestion is to do a reconciliation at least for the credit notes. Mohammed Ismail says invoice and e-invoice both to be cancelled after 24 hours. Due to order cancelled, we are issuing e-credit note for the same. Please suggest if recipient reject both invoice and credit note in IMS. Yes, that is the action recipient may take. He should. Ideally, if I am the recipient, I will reject both invoice and credit note. Right? Now, the question is that the department might ask you to pay for the credit note reversal, right? And for the invoice rejection, it will ask you to do nothing. So in my opinion, you see, for an invoice reversal, till now you were issuing a credit note. That action may require a rethink. Even in the even in one of the advisories of the IMS, I have seen, do not issue a credit note for an invoice reversal. It should be done by invoice amendment. Make the invoice 00. That is a most simpler process in light of IMS. Mr. Singhania says, if service has been received in 2020-21 by foreign party, Indian party, but not raised the invoice completely till date, will the new change in RCM affect this transaction, and also will RCM need to be paid now for service rendered in financial year 2020-21? So yes, Mr. Singhania, if you have missed out RCM, 13.3C talks only about the time of supply, right? But even other than 13.3C, you had to pay this RCM. Please pay the RCM, take the credit, and pay the interest. So not much change, only interest amount you have to pay for 1 month more, right? Earlier it was 60 days from date of invoice of the supplier. Now it is at, from the date of receipt of service. Okay, please show previous slide too. Mr. Upender will mail the PPT to you. DRC 3A is not active as on date. You see, advisory has come. I have not seen actually whether it is active or not, but advisory has come. If not now, maybe it will be active in a day or two. Well, I have to also check. I am speaking only on the basis of the GST network advisory. Riddhi says, can we decide to matter to go for amnesty and to filing for appeal? Yes, what I understand, Riddhi, is that in case of a matter when you want to go for amnesty, whether you should go for an appeal or not, my suggestion is yes. Otherwise, department would take a recovery proceeding against you. Mr. Rajesh says, if taxpayer has paid tax of 95 earlier, has paid the balance 5 rupees on 15th of November, then what is the last date of making the application for amnesty? See, 5 rupees on 15th. Mr. Rajesh, your question is not very clear. If you can make your question clearer. Mr. Arvind says ITC 04, job work return not filed for 3 years. Restrictions applicable? Yes, should be applicable. Please do file your ITC 04. As of now in the advisory, they have not said ITC 04, but I feel that even for ITC 04 going forward, restriction should be applicable. Mr. Rajesh says our order issued by officer shows interest applicable in DRC 7. Taxpayer has paid tax and interest before council meeting in 3, but did not pay 10% penalty. He wants to apply for amnesty, whether he is going to file 3A on the portal. Interest is shown as 0. Hence, liability is also 0 on the portal. Should it declare interest paid in 3A? Yes, you must make the interest paid routed through DRC 3A, right? Only then you know whatever you have paid routed through DRC 3A, you have paid an additional amount. So I don't think the proper officer will reject your application. Presentation would be mailed to you. My query involves whether GST implication in export DPP shipment scenario where clearing agent is hired, where reimbursement of expenses, including customs duty paid by the agent, subject to GST. Additional customs duty to another country would be part of the value of supply. You see, Mr. Sunil, there are two different scenarios in your question. One is for the valuation, whether customs duty would be applicable or not. Answer is yes. For the valuation part, customs duty would partake the value of supply for IGST. Second issue is whether the reimbursement to the CHA that is liable to GST or not. So now, even in CHA payment, you have two payments, two types of payment. One is the reimbursement, pure vanilla reimbursement of customs duty. There you have got a custom challan in your name, no GST is applicable. The other are for various miscellaneous expenditure he has done for you, like loading, unloading, custom clearance, expenses at the customs. On those, if he has the bills which are in your name, or where you, the bills for services which he has taken on your behalf, if you can prove the title of the services for which he is wanting a reimbursement, if that title is with you, no GST. But if there is no title, he just claims a lump sum, right? And there no title is there on you, there GST is applicable, right? This is a very good question. You cannot take a blanket stand on CHA agent payments, right? Many of the taxpayers, they are just taking a blanket reimbursement. Hey, no GST. I would say this is the wrong stand. Even for TDS under 194C, it is a wrong stand. Tomorrow, the department might come to you and disallow your expenses under income tax for because no TDS has been deducted, and GST also you might be under a, your CHA might get into trouble. Okay, Mr. Prakash will send you the PPT. Do we need to charge interest while issuing supplementary invoice or debit note against settlement of prices customer retrospectively with the customer retrospectively? Well, you have to see the time of supply. For invoice or debit note for cost escalation, if the agreement is afterwards, no interest. If the agreement is beforehand, then yes, interest would be applicable. Mr. Sunil says if restriction under 9610 is removed with effect from October, we export with payment and claim a refund in the books of account and claim a refund by utilizing the accumulated ITC in the books prior to October. Yes. So the moment 9610 restriction is gone from 8th of October, the very fact, the only fact that ITC belong to the previous period, that does not restrict 9610 refund. Refund is a different procedure. Taking ITC is a different procedure. What has gone is the restriction of the 9610 refund. Okay, Mr. Rasik said IMS is available as a supplier to see which transaction has been accepted or rejected by my customer. Yes, Mr. Rasik, IMS is available as a supplier. If recipient rejects a credit note, will increase my liability in 3B, but in this same month or next month? Next month. If recipient reject invoice, then supplier to report liability against same in 3B or can issue credit note. You see, Mr. Rajesh, just because the recipient has rejected your invoice on the IMS, it does not absolve you from paying the GST on a supply which has happened. You have to see whether supply has happened or not. See, your recipient fraudulently has rejected. He has paid you in cash and he has rejected your invoice. In that case, you should not reject the or pass a credit note, right? You have to take a stand on the basis of your supply. Mr. Gupta says in case some customers are not issuing debit note because they have entered the invoice in their books too. So we have to raise credit note from our side only. In that case, how to manage the situation? We do not have debit note. So in GST, you need not have a debit note at all. In fact, they cannot issue you a debit note. You are the person who has to raise a credit note. In some of the cases, customers are not issuing debit note. Yes, they should not issue you a debit note, right? That debit note, commercial debit note issuing, apropos your GST credit note, that is a separate commercial process. It is not the right GST process, I would say. Okay. Mr. Nikhil says, can we make the pending invoice and RCM bills in IMS? RCM bills do not come in IMS. Other invoices, you can keep it pending. Mr. Gupta says, can we amend the IRN invoices if there is any compliance issue for the same, or what should be done? See, IRN, you can only cancel within 24 hours. Otherwise, you cannot amend IRN invoices. This is a good, issue. So yeah, to this extent, you have to issue a credit note. To this extent, uh, you cannot make an amendment of the invoices on the portal. Yeah. So for IRN invoices, again, credit note is the only option. If the supplier rejects both invoice and credit note, then you see you have to live with it. Mr. Arvind says we have missed taking credit on bill of entries from 2020. Can we take the credit of IGST? Mr. Arvind, very good question. Yes, my answer is an absolute yes. In case you have mistaken credit of bill of entries for any period from 2017, please go ahead and take the credit. There is no time barring period for bill of entry ITC. Last question, can we make the pending invoices for the next month availment? Yes, for invoices, you can keep them pending for the next month. So thank you very much to all the participants for joining this webinar. And we hope that we have answered all the queries which were there. That is the use of joining an online webinar. PPT would be mailed to you. Thank you very much. Over to you, Samir and Namrata.
Thank you, Vivek. Thank you for this detailed session. You covered almost all the last 1 month development that happened in the GST. You have covered all of them and in a very detailed manner. We hope to see you in the next session. And interestingly, we have a GST council meeting next month, so we'll have that session after this council meeting. And thank you all the participants for joining this session, and hope to see you in the next session. Over to you, Namrata. Thank you.
Thank you, Vivek sir, for this wonderful deliberation. And thank you, Samir sir, for coordinating this session with us. Thank you to all the participants for attending the webinar. We conduct such webinars every month and we hope to see you all in the upcoming webinars as well. We will shortly share the PPT and the video link to all the participants.
Thank you.